Friends, welcome back to DNT Law classes. So in today's class, we shall discuss about the rights and liabilities of registered trade union. So in the last class, we have seen what trade union movement is, the definition Trade Unions Act of 1926, the different definitions that is covered, and then we have seen the registration of trade union. And in this class, we shall discuss about the rights and liabilities of a registered trade union. As I have already mentioned, the Trade Unions Act of 1926 is applicable only for registered trade union, and it does not mandate that all the associations has to be registered, compulsorily registered as a trade union. If they register their trade union, they'll get a few immunities, and that is only applicable to the registered trade union, and the non-registered trade union cannot confer the immunities that has been dealt under this act. So let's get started. So in today's class, we shall look on to some of the very important sessions, that is section 13, 14, 16 till section 27. So the first session that we shall be dealing is section 13. So what section 13 talks about? So as per section 13, when a trade union is registered under the act, it gets a legal status. So as per section 13, the after registration, a trade union will get a legal status, as in it shall be considered as a body corporate, and shall be known by its registered name. Then it shall have a perpetual succession under a common seal and have power to hold and acquire property. It can be sued and it can sue, and it shall also have the right to enter into contract, etc. So these are some of the legal status that a registered trade union gets after registering their trade union. And section 13 talks about all these things. And the next one is, we shall talk about the difference between registered and unregistered trade union. So from a series of classes, we have already got a clear cut idea about the differences. So I'll give a small brief once again. So registered trade union, as you can see in the notes, is a juristic person. As per section 13, when a trade union is registered, it gets a legal status. So it is regarded as a juristic person, and in unregistered trade union, it is not. It cannot be considered as a juristic person because it is not registered. And the next one is, it is a legal person and it can sue and be sued. What all we have discussed under the section 13 can also be written as the difference between registered and unregistered trade union. So see, can hold and acquire properties, and in unregistered trade union they cannot hold and acquire property, and it can, in registered trade union, it can contract in its name and it can enter into contract in its name, whereas in unregistered trade union it cannot. And then in a registered trade union, this is another new point, that is, a registered trade union can be affiliated to any national and international federation, whereas in unregistered trade union it cannot. And in registered trade union, it has to account for funds and submit returns with a prescribed time, and in unregistered trade union, it is not necessary to maintain accounts and file returns. And while dealing with the topic registration, we have already dealt that if a trade union has been in existence prior to the registration, or prior to the application of registration of trade union, if it was in existence for a period of 1 year prior to the same, then they have to affix a copy of their statements with regard to their assets and liabilities and their accounts, etc., along with the application form. You have to keep that in mind too. So let's move on to the next topic, rights of trade union. So we can also write section 13 under the rights of trade union. So the next one is we have already looked on section 13, and the next one is the trade union can collect various funds for various purposes, for civil as well as for political purposes. So a trade union can collect funds. It can be for civic purpose or for political purpose, and hence based on the same, the funds of the trade union are divided into general funds and political funds. So the requisites with regard to the general funds is mentioned under the section 15, and with regard to the political funds or the requisites is of political funds is mentioned under the section 16. So I'll once again explain. The trade union can collect funds, and the funds are of two types, that is general funds and political funds. And as per section 15, the general funds can be used only for the specific provisions that is mentioned within the act. That is, the accounts, the amount from the general funds can be used only for the following purposes. The first one is payment of salaries, allowances, expenses to the office bearers, and the next one is for payment for the administrative expenses such as audit of accounts of the general funds. And then that is if there is any expense with regard to the conduct of for conducting the audit, then such expenses are also met from the general funds. And the next one is for insurance policy, that is a few of the insurance policies that are meant for the workmen, for the employees, is also covered under this fund. And for the educational, social or religious benefits for the member or the dependents of the trade union, that is all the funds that is for the betterment of the employees are being covered under this general fund. And also with regard to the administrative expenses and for the payment of salaries, allowances and expenses to the office bearers, the funds are being taken from the general funds. Then moving on to the next section, that is section 16, that is they can also have this. So the trade union for their own benefit, so when the act was formulated, the legislative makers came to a conclusion that it is important for trade union to enter into political functions for the purpose for the promotion of their civil and political interest. And hence the trade union is given a power to have a separate fund for the same, that is political funds. So the needs with regard to the political in nature are being taken under from this fund. And that is for if any member representing the trade union is competing for the elections, then the funds with regard to such an election or the expenses with regard to such an election is being covered under this head, that is section 16, under this fund. And the next one is for the maintenance of any person who is a member of the legislative assembly. For all these purposes and for all these expenses, a separate political funds is also collected by the trade union, and such expenses have been covered under this fund. Now we are talking about the rights of trade union. That is the first right we have discussed is section 13. It gets a legal status. So when a trade union is registered, it has a right to be recognized as a legal person or a juristic person. So the next one is it can also have funds. It can also collect funds for various purposes, and hence funds are differentiated under the two heads. There are two types of funds, that is general fund and political fund. The requisites of general fund is defined under the section 15, and the requisites of political fund is defined under the section 16. And the next one is the very important aspect of registration of a trade union is that what it gets a immunity. It gets some immunity. So there is some benefits if a registered trade union has been registered. So far we have been keeping on repeating the same point, that is it gets a few civil as well as immunity from civil as well as criminal liabilities. So before the passing of the Trade Unions Act of 1926, whatever activities that is done by the trade union, if it interferes with the daily transaction, the daily business, then it shall be considered as illegal and they shall be prosecuted. So the important case that we have already dealt is the Buckingham Mill case. So for that, the Trade Union Act, in order to confer some immunities, the Trade Union Act of 1926 was brought in. So, as per section 17, no office bearers, the executors, no office bearers shall be liable for any punishment under the section 120B of the Indian Penal Code if such an activity is for the furtherance of the object of the trade union. So, if the members or if the office bearers are doing any activity that is actually for the furtherance of the trade union, that is for what purpose the trade union has been established with regard to employment, with regard to labor difficulties, with regard to better payment, etc., then such people or such office bearers can't be prosecuted under the section 120B. So it is available to offences that has punishment for a period of 6 months. And one of the important or worth taking noting case in this section is J Engineering Limited Works Limited versus State of West Bengal. So in this case, it has been held that if a movement by a workman within the premises of the industrial establishment is being conducted in a very peaceful manner without violating any provision of the act, then they get immunity under the section. So if they are calling for strike in a very peaceful and amicable manner, and if they are asking for their rights in a very peaceful manner, then such can't be considered as illegal. And if they are resorting to any unlawful means such as gharavo, then they won't get immunity under the same. For example, blocking the way, confinement of an individual in a very small space without light, fan for a longer period, without food, that is the basic need, that is a basic humane thing that should be given to a person. And if such people are doing such an offense, then they can't get immunity under the section. Then moving on to the next section, that is section 18. So as per section 18, the trade union also gets immunity from civil liabilities, same as in section 17. In 18 also they says that if anything that has been done for the furtherance of the objects of the trade union, then it shall get immunity under the same. For example, they shall also not be prosecuted for any tortious act committed by them. And whole gets the next one is, so we have dealt with section 17 and 18, sorry, section 17 and 18, yeah. And then next we shall discuss about who shall get immunity, that is any registered trade union. We have already learned that. The next one is any office bearers and any member of trade union. All these persons will get immunity under the sections if their activity is lawful. And the next section is the next section is 21. So as per section 21, minors who are above the age of 15 years can also be a member of a trade union, and they get all the rights that a normal member gets. So moving on to the next section, the next topic, that is duties and liabilities of registered trade union. So in rights of trade union, we have seen sections 13, 15, 16, 17, 18 and 20. In this section we shall learn about the duties and liabilities of a registered trade union. So we have already learned while learning about the discussing about the registration of trade union that whenever an application has to be submitted, it has to follow some condition precedents as mentioned under section 6. So the registrar shall look into the application form whether or not such condition precedents has been followed by the trade union, and that is one of the duties of the trade union to follow as per the provisions mentioned under section 6 of the act. That is the name of the trade union and the object for which the trade union has been formed. Then we have also seen that there is a minimum subscription that has to be given by the members, that is rupees 1 per annum for the workmen and rupees we have seen that. So that, and the next one is the manner in which the rules, so each trade union should have certain rules of trade union, so how or the manner in which such rules is to be amended. Then we have also seen the manner of election of the office bearers. Then we've also seen that the trade union can hold in funds, so the safe custody of the funds of the trade union. So all these things are mentioned under section 6. So the trade union, when applying for the registration of a trade union, has to look in whether all such provision has been properly complied with. So the next section is, as per section 12, it is a liability of a trade union to send details to the registrar if there is any change in the address of the head office. And moving on to the next one, that is liability to send notice of the address of the trade union to registrar to make appropriate changes. We have already seen that. And the next one is liability to constitute the executive of the trade union. That is the executives are the there will be a president, vice president. We've seen that. And as per section 21A, some people cannot be appointed as an executive. That is a person who is not who's under the age of 18 years, and the persons who are convicted by any court within the territory of India for the moral turpitude. So under these reasons, if a person cannot be made as an executive, so this is in section 21A. Moving on to the next section, that is section 20. As per section 20, so it is the duty and liability of the trade union to provide their books of accounts that is maintained by them whenever asked by the office bearer and for or asked by any member of the trade union. And the next one is, if there is any change with regard to the name of the trade union, then it shall send a notice of the same to the registrar. So this is mentioned under the section 25. What are the perquisites? The notice should be in writing, and it should be signed by the registrar and 7 members of the trade union. And the next section is section 27, that is with regard to dissolution. So it is the duty of the trade union to give notice to the registrar within 40 days on the dissolution of trade union, and it shall be in writing, that is also signed by the secretary of the trade union along with 7 members of the trade union. And if the registrar, after seeing onto the application, is satisfied that all the provision is properly complied with, then the set changes is made by the registrar, and it shall have effect from the date of such registration. And the next one is section 28 with regard to the liability of the trade union to file returns. So the trade union is liable to file return within the prescribed time, that is normally 31st of December of every year, and if they don't, they'll have to face some penalties. So the next one is disqualification of the office bearers of the trade union. We've already learned that. And this is it, guys. Thank you. I hope you all have understood it.